Yeah, that's how it started. Not with yelling, not even with a fight. Just a single slap. Loud, sharp, humiliating. The burn on my cheek still felt fresh, but it wasn't from the pain. It was the shame. The pure, gut-wrenching shame of being hit in my own house, in front of my sons. But let me rewind. 7 minutes earlier, everything looked normal. It was a Saturday. The twins, Ethan and Noah, were watching cartoons in the living room, giggling over some animated nonsense. I was in the backyard setting up the grill. Ribs, burgers, that corn salad Casey always pretended to like. I'd been planning the family barbecue for weeks. The weather was perfect. I wanted it to feel like something solid, something good. But Casey, my wife, she wasn't present. She stood at the patio door, scrolling her phone like it was more real than anything around her. And that dress. Red. Tight. The one she hadn't worn since our anniversary 3 years ago. The kind of dress that gets you into trouble just by looking. I tried to joke. Maybe something a little less nightclub? She looked up barely and said, "Don't start, Tyler." I told you, we're having company. Then the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there he was. 6 feet 4 inches, overbuilt, tattooed, wearing a fake designer shirt 2 sizes too small. He didn't shake my hand, didn't smile, and just walked past me like he owned the place. Casey lit up. "This is Darius," she said, her voice sugar-sweet. "He's a friend." The kids stared. No reaction. They didn't know this man. Neither did I. He made himself comfortable fast. Kicked off his shoes, plopped on the couch, propped his feet up on the coffee table like it was his. I watched him closely while I poured drinks. Casey laughed at something he whispered. She leaned in, slapped his chest lightly like some teenage girl in a rom-com. I gripped the bottle tighter. And then he stood up, walked over to me, calm, confident, like he'd rehearsed the line in the mirror. "You're done, bro," he said. "I'm the man of the house now." I blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?" He looked at Casey. She didn't flinch. Didn't deny it. Didn't even look at me. Then Darius slapped me. Open palm, full force, in front of my kids. I didn't move. My body froze, but my blood turned electric. It wasn't fear. It was fire. "And Casey?" She smiled. The moment his hand hit my face, something inside me snapped. The sound echoed. Sharp. Clean. Not just through the air. Through me. It wasn't the sting on my cheek that hit hardest. It was the stillness that followed. The kind of silence that feels like judgment. Ethan froze halfway off the couch, a single chip in his hand. Noah's eyes were wide, his mouth trembling like he wasn't sure if this was real. I saw myself through their eyes. Not as a man. As the guy who just got slapped and didn't move. I turned to look at Casey. She didn't rush to stop Darius. Didn't gasp. Didn't flinch. She smiled. That smug, glassy smile people wear when everything's going exactly as they planned. She wasn't shocked. She was satisfied. And something about that look. It flipped a switch I didn't know I had. I didn't even think. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I grabbed him by the collar and drove him straight through the glass coffee table. Shards exploded under us like ice. Darius screamed, arms flailing, but I was already on top of him. He stood up, walked over to me, calm, confident, like he'd rehearsed the line in the mirror. "You're done, bro," he said. "I'm the man of the house now." My fist connected with his jaw before he could even step back. He stumbled. I followed. Tackled him into the coffee table. Glass shattered beneath us like an explosion. The room lit up in noise. Kids screaming, wood snapping, my own breath ragged and heavy. Darius tried to push me off, but he wasn't ready. Not for this. I drove my knee into his ribs, then grabbed his wrist and twisted. He howled. Something popped. Not like a clean break, no, like splintered wood cracking under pressure. Blood ran from his nose. Onto the floor. Onto me. I didn't stop. He wasn't just a man. He was an insult. He was the final proof that the life I built had been hollowed out from the inside. Casey screamed, "Tyler, stop!" But it didn't sound like panic. It sounded like a cue, like she was waiting for this to happen. And I'd played my part. It wasn't until I heard my kids crying that I paused. Ethan's voice, tiny and shaking, cut through the noise. "Daddy?" Everything stopped. Darius coughed beneath me. His face looked less human now. Just swollen skin and blood. The adrenaline drained in one wave. My fist dropped, and then the neighbors came rushing in. His face was swelling fast. One eye shut. His arm bent at a wrong angle. The sirens came fast. Too fast. Red and blue lights flashed against the walls like some twisted light show. I barely had time to catch my breath before the paramedics burst through the front door, pushing the gurney straight to where Darius lay, moaning in shards of broken glass. They didn't ask me what happened. They didn't need to. It was written all over the room, blood on the carpet, my knuckles torn. Casey standing to the side like a director calling cut after a perfect scene. One of the medics looked at me, then at Darius, then back again. He didn't speak, just shook his head slightly like he'd seen this before, like I was another man pushed too far. Darius whimpered as they loaded him into the ambulance, his fingers twitching, his jaw hanging loose. It was the first time I'd seen him afraid. Then came the cops. 2 officers. Calm. Director. One talked to me. The other pulled Casey aside. I expected handcuffs. Expected to be read my rights. But instead I got questions. Did he hit you first? Were the kids in danger? Any weapons? Before I could speak, Mrs. Keller from next door came over. She'd seen it from the patio, saw Darius slap me, saw Casey just stand there. She gave a full statement, backed me up completely. The officers looked at each other, then at me. One of them handed me a card and said, "We're not pressing charges at this time, but we recommend you get some legal help. Domestic situations like this, they get messy." And just like that, they were gone. No cuffs, no warning, just a mess no badge could clean up. I stood in the middle of my living room, shirt ripped, chest heaving, hands bloodied. Casey looked at me like I'd ruined her evening. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. I looked back at her and for the first time really saw her, not my wife, not the mother of my children, just a stranger in red. I didn't care about the report. I cared about the silence in my house, the look on my sons' faces. Ethan and Noah stood at the edge of the hallway, frozen. Ethan's lip trembled. Noah clutched a stuffed bear like it was the only solid thing left. I wanted to run to them, hold them, tell them everything was going to be okay. But how could I say that when nothing felt okay? Casey sat on the arm of the couch, arms crossed, legs perfectly posed like a magazine ad. No apology, no guilt, just inconvenience. I turned to her, my voice low but steady. "How long?" She blinked. "What? How long has he been the man of this house?" She rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Tyler." "I'm not being dramatic, I just want the truth." She stood up, brushing off invisible lint from her dress. "You've been boring for years," she said flatly. "I needed something more." That word, more. It hit harder than a slap. I walked over to the fireplace and picked up a photo. Our honeymoon in Maui. She was laughing in that picture. I was holding her hand. We looked happy. Real. Now it felt like I was looking at 2 strangers. "So you brought him here? Introduced him to our boys like some twisted tryout?" "He wanted to meet them," she shrugged. "We were thinking of going public soon." I nearly dropped the frame. "You mean you were actually going to replace me?" She didn't respond, just checked her nails like she was bored of the conversation. And I should have known. The late-night yoga classes, the sudden interest in lingerie she never wore for me, the business trips she took alone. There was one night I found a hotel receipt in her coat pocket, downtown, 2 nights, king suite. When I asked, she said it was a spa weekend with her sister. I wanted to believe her. I needed to. Because the alternative was too painful to face. But now the truth was staring me in the face. And it was wearing a red dress and 0 remorse. I left her standing there and walked to the hallway, opened the junk drawer we never really cleaned. Behind expired coupons and broken pens, I found it. Her old phone. The one she said just stopped working months ago. I took it to the kitchen, plugged it in, screen lit up instantly. Passcode? Please. She never changed it. It unlocked in seconds. And what I found next? Well, that's a whole new kind of betrayal. I plugged her old phone into the kitchen wall, the one she claimed was completely dead months ago. It lit up instantly, no lag, no stutter, like it had just been waiting to speak. I stood at the counter holding it like it was radioactive. Her old phone, sleek pink case, tiny crack in the corner, still smudged with fingerprints that weren't mine. She tossed it in a drawer months ago and told me it completely died. But now, as I plugged it into the outlet, it sparked to life within seconds. No hesitation, no charging delay, just light, like it had been asleep, like it had been waiting to confess. For a second I didn't move. My thumb hovered above the screen like it wasn't just glass and plastic, but a detonator. And in a way, it was. I already knew what I'd find. I didn't want to see it. But not seeing it wouldn't make it untrue. I swiped up. 4 digits. Her birthday. She never changed it. It unlocked immediately. And just like that, my marriage, my trust, my illusion of what we had, was laid bare. I felt like I had just stepped into a room I'd been in 1,000 times, only to realize the walls were all made of mirrors and none of them showed my reflection. Her wallpaper was a picture of the boys on the beach last summer, Ethan carrying Noah on his back, both of them beaming like nothing could ever go wrong. I stared at it for a few seconds, already feeling the weight of what I was about to find. Then I opened messages. The first thread was pinned. Darius. The very first text? He's asleep. Come over. Sent at 11:43 p.m., the night she told me she was at a late client at dinner. Another, last night was insane. Another, he's so clueless it's almost fun. The further I scrolled, the more it read like a running commentary of betrayal. She hadn't just cheated, she played with it. She wore it like perfume. Some of the messages were short and to the point. Others were full-blown confessions, how he made her feel alive, how she couldn't wait to get out of the house again. One even said, he's basically a roommate at this point, but you're the one I think about when I'm lying next to him. I read that one twice. Then I wished I hadn't. I kept scrolling, each message cutting deeper than the last. This wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown alternate reality she built behind my back. She didn't just sneak around, she documented it. There were long chats where she complained about our marriage like it was a prison sentence. He still talks about BBQs like it's 1950. I swear if I hear one more dad joke, I'll scream. She wrote things I never imagined she was capable of. He thinks buying diapers is some heroic act. Meanwhile, you make me feel like a woman again. And the worst one. Tyler's a good man, but he's not a real man. That one stopped me. Not because it was mean, but because it felt rehearsed. Like something she'd said out loud before, maybe even to him, maybe even in front of our kids. There was a photo. Darius in our living room playing video games on the couch, his feet up on my coffee table. The caption. King of the Castle. LOL. I hadn't just been replaced. I'd been erased, rewritten. I was no longer her husband. I was the background character in her new fantasy. Then came the photos, the selfies in hotel rooms, the mirror shots with him in the background, the outfits I'd never seen. Lingerie she claimed didn't fit anymore. I shouldn't have looked further, but I had to know. And then I found the videos. One was taken in our bed. She was wearing that red dress, the one she hadn't worn since our anniversary, the one she wore to the barbecue. She was laughing, her hair messy, whispering to the camera like it was a secret she couldn't wait to spill. He has no idea, she said, almost giggling. It makes it more exciting. The sheets behind her were mine, the pillows I laid my head on, the comforter I bought when we first moved in. I stared at the paused frame for what felt like forever. It wasn't even rage anymore. It was something quieter, colder, like someone had turned down the temperature of my heart, and I didn't know if it would ever heat back up again. I walked out of the kitchen holding the phone and found her still sitting on the couch scrolling through her feed. She looked up when she saw me. Her eyes flicked down to the screen in my hand, and for a moment we both just stood there. You saw it, she said, like I just found her watching a show she wasn't supposed to. I nodded. And I hope he survives, I said, because I want him to remember what I did to him. She let out a short laugh. You're pathetic. No, I said calmly. I was loyal. I was a husband. I was a father. You're just a story I'll have to explain to my kids someday. She blinked slowly, rolled her eyes, and grabbed her purse. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She didn't say a single word. She just walked to the front door and left, didn't slam it, didn't even pause. And just like that, she was gone. The silence afterward felt wrong, like the air in the house had shifted, heavier, thicker. I looked around at the family photos on the walls, the toys in the corner, the picture of our wedding still on the mantel. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a crime scene, and trust was the only thing that had been murdered. The next morning I was sitting in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee I hadn't even tasted. The boys were still asleep upstairs. The house felt like it had been drained of its soul. And then I heard the key turn. She walked in like nothing had happened, wearing sunglasses, heels, and the same beige coat she used to throw on for brunch. She didn't look at me, just dropped her purse on the counter and said flatly, "I hope you cleaned up the glass. It was everywhere." That was it. No apology, no hesitation, no shame. I looked up from my mug, not surprised, not angry, just done. "You're unbelievable," I said, my voice steady. She took off her sunglasses and stared at me like I was the one being dramatic. "Don't start, Tyler. I'm tired." "Tired?" I stood. "You're tired. You brought another man into our home, let him put his hands on me in front of our kids, and now you want to pretend like I'm the problem?" She crossed her arms. "You were the problem. You've been holding this family back for years. Your job, your routines, your boring little BBQs. I needed more." "More of what?" I asked. "Lies? Deceit? Getting tossed around at hotel rooms while I put our kids to bed?" She flinched. Just a little. But it was the first real thing I'd seen on her face since the whole thing started. I saw everything, Casey. The messages, the videos. You weren't even trying to hide it. She looked away for the first time. "You weren't supposed to see that." "But I did. And now you're standing here like I should apologize for defending myself." She shook her head, that old pitying smirk creeping back in. "Darius made me feel alive. You just made me feel as I'm stuck." "And what about the boys?" I snapped. "Did you think about them? When you let that man walk into their home and call himself the new father, while you were sneaking around?" "They'll adjust," she said coldly. "Kids are resilient. Eventually they'll see what a real man looks like." That was it. I didn't shout. I didn't slam anything. I just looked her in the eye and said, "You call him a real man? A guy who hits the father of your kids in front of them? Who ends up in the hospital because he couldn't keep his hands to himself?" She didn't respond. I stepped a little closer, not to intimidate her, but to make sure she heard every word. "I gave you my best years, Casey. I gave you my name, my children, my loyalty, and you gave me betrayal in return." She scoffed. "Spare me the speech." "No," I said. "You don't get to walk over this like it's just another inconvenience. You lit the match. You burned this down." She looked at me, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. And then she smiled, that same smug, unapologetic smile. "I'm moving out by the end of the week," she said casually. "I'll file for full custody. The boys deserve to be with someone who isn't violent." I stared at her. "You're going to try to take my sons from me?" She turned her back and walked toward the stairs. "Better start packing, Tyler. You're not going to win this." I watched her go, heart pounding, not from fear but from clarity. I wasn't afraid anymore. "You won't win this either," I said, loud enough for her to hear. Later that day, I waited until she came downstairs again. She was scrolling through her phone, half dressed, half bored. I was already sitting at the dining table. There were 2 mugs of coffee, one in front of each chair. She glanced at them with suspicion but sat anyway. "This better not be another guilt trip," she said. I didn't flinch. I slid a thick folder across the table. Legal papers, divorce, custody, documentation, everything. She opened it, flipping through like it was a magazine. "What the hell is this?" "I'm done," I said flatly. "You made your choice, now I'm making mine." She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You're really going to break up our family over a mistake?" "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary," I said, leaning forward. "You brought another man into our home. You let him call himself the head of this house. You let him put his hands on me. That's not a mistake. That's war." Her face hardened. "You don't have the spine to take me to court." "Try me," I said. She narrowed her eyes. "I'll ruin you. I'll take the kids." "No, you won't," I said. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. I've got screenshots, videos, doorbell cam footage, witnesses. I'm the one who's been here, feeding them, bathing them, helping with homework. You're just the woman who shows up late and smells like another man." That broke her posture. She leaned back, arms still folded, but less confident now. "You think you're strong now?" she whispered. "Wait until you're alone." I smiled. A real one this time. Number and I'm rebuilding. She didn't answer. She just stood up and walked away. No storming off, no screaming. She left like a thief who finally realized she got caught. And as I watched her walk out that door, this time for real, I didn't feel sad or angry. I felt free. She didn't just walk out of my house, she walked out of the story. The first morning after she left for good, the silence in the house was brutal. No high heels clicking across the tile, no perfume trail lingering in the hallway. Just me, a half-empty coffee pot, and two sleepy boys padding into the kitchen in oversized t-shirts. Noah rubbed his eyes. "Is Mommy still gone?" I nodded. "Yeah, bud. She won't be staying here anymore." He blinked, then climbed into the chair like it was just another Tuesday. I made pancakes. Burned the first batch. Got syrup on the counter. Forgot to warm the milk. But the boys didn't complain. Later that afternoon, I took down the last photo of us, our wedding picture on the mantel. Slid it into a drawer I didn't plan to open again. I changed the locks. Not out of spite. Out of self-respect. I stripped the bed and threw the sheets into the trash. Not because of what happened on them, but because I didn't want to sleep in someone else's memories anymore. The house felt emptier, but not haunted. Just mine again. Week by week, I learned how to be a dad on my own. I figured out Noah liked honey in his oatmeal, not sugar. Ethan hated the color green, so I stopped packing those little broccoli trees in his lunchbox. I picked them up from school every day, helped with math homework, read bedtime stories, even when I was too tired to finish a sentence. And every so often, one of them would ask, "Do you think Mommy's coming back?" I never lied. "I don't think so," I'd say gently. "But I'm here. Always." There were hard days. Days where I cried in the garage so they wouldn't see. Nights I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. But then there were moments. Small, quiet victories. Noah falling asleep in my lap during movie night. Ethan asking me to come to his school assembly, not because he had to, but because he wanted me there. The first time they both laughed at my joke again. They still missed her. I could see it in their eyes. But they stopped waiting by the window around dinner time. Stopped asking why she didn't call. The pain hadn't disappeared. It had just settled into something manageable. We were adjusting. Casey faded like smoke. She didn't fight for custody like she said she would. Maybe she knew she'd already lost more than court documents could name. She called a few times in the first month. Left voicemails, one-liners. "Tell the boys I love them. Hope they're okay." Eventually even those stopped, and honestly, the house got quieter, but it also got lighter. I realized something. Peace doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it just sneaks in through the cracks after the chaos clears. One evening, Kyle came by with a six-pack and that look on his face that said, "No talking unless you want to." We sat on the porch, watching the boys chase each other barefoot in the yard. I laughed, real laughter, when Ethan tripped and Noah shouted, "I win," like it was the Olympics. Kyle handed me a beer. "First time I've heard you laugh in months." I nodded. First time it felt real. That night, after I tucked the kids in and loaded the dishwasher, I sat alone in the kitchen with the window open, cool breeze, quiet street. My house didn't feel like a reminder of what I lost anymore. It felt like a space I could rebuild in. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't waiting for the next disaster. I was living in the aftermath and learning how to plant something in the ashes. People ask me now, "Do you miss her?" And the honest answer is, no. Not because I didn't love her once, but because the woman I loved never really existed. She was a version of her that wanted the life we built, for a while, until it got inconvenient. What I miss is the version of myself I was before I started shrinking to keep her happy, before I mistook survival for strength, before I thought loving someone meant bleeding for them endlessly. But that version of me, he's gone too. The man I am now knows better. I learned something through all this. You don't get stronger by pretending the betrayal didn't happen. You get stronger by looking it in the face, letting it burn through you, and still choosing to get up the next day and make pancakes and keep going. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart, If you've ever had to sit across from a person who made you feel small and call them family. If you've ever had to pick up the pieces of a life someone else shattered and figure out how to keep breathing, hear this. You are not broken. You are not weak because you love deeply, and you are not the problem just because they couldn't see your worth. You don't owe them closure. You owe yourself peace. So if today is the day you finally choose yourself, you're not losing a family, you're building your freedom.